Self-service BI is a holy grail for many BI teams. Now, the first step of achieving it with Power BI is building out an enterprise semantic model. An enterprise semantic model is really what traditionally would have been a SAS cube for an organization. They allow users to connect to them with Excel or now Power BI or paginated reports and build reports on their own without knowing how to build out a good semantic model themselves. All they have to worry about is the presentation and the organization of the data, not all that wild backend stuff. Now, if you're building out an enterprise semantic model, ideally the semantic model is going to be able to serve multiple departments. As a result, you might have some measures in the semantic model that are relevant to one department, like let's just say HR, but aren't relevant to another department, like let's just say finance. You can use object level security in order to hide these measures from one team or the other. So let's jump in. So here we are in Power BI, and I have a really simple report here. It has a measure table with just a regular measure and a sensitive measure. And then it also has a hidden table right here that has a singular column called hide me. Now, for those of you that have used Power BI before, you're probably familiar with the concept of RLS or row level security. This is functionality in Power BI that allows you to define security roles that hide certain rows of data from an individual user. Remember, Power BI is basically a tabular model under the hood. When you're creating a report or a new semantic model, you're essentially creating a new tabular model. And tabular models have functionality called OLS or object level security. Now, what this does is this allows you to define an expression that hides an entire table or object in the semantic model from someone, not just an individual row. Previously, this functionality, well, existing in Power BI, you had to go through and you had to enable it using Tabular Editor too. You can now, with the new TMDL editor, turn it on by just executing some TMDL code. First, you would define an standard RLS role, then you would go and edit the RLS role to include the code. Let's take a look at some of that sample TMDL code right now. So here I am going into TMDL view, and then I'm going to look at the role right here, and I'm just going to drag the role over here. And this is a role that I already defined in the modeling view of the front end of Power BI called limited user. It has a model permission of read, and then a table level permission of essentially none. So they can't see this column. This, just essentially setting up this piece right here, you can just copy and paste in the table that you want to hide and configure it. If this is too complex, you also can go into Tabular Editor. So you can connect to the model, you can expand the role right here, and then under table level permissions, right, you can go through and you can go and you can assign in OLS. In this case, I have OLS enabled, right, on one column in this role. I find the tabular editor version still easier to do than the TMDL version, but it's good to know that you have these two different options. Now, what I'm about to show you is something that I learned from a SQL BI article I read in 2022. I'll link the article down in the video description. But it's basically the concept that when OLS activates on a table, it hides all of the measures and KPIs that are also dependent on that table. Which means that if you do something similar like what we've done here, so creating a blank table with an empty column, and then create a fake dependency on that table in the measure. So right here, right, I have a variable called security that's just taking the max of this empty column, but has no bearing on what's actually returned by the measure. When the OLS role is activated, it will hide that measure, thinking that it has a dependency on the table that's no longer available. So let's go ahead and let's check that out by going into modeling, view as, and then viewing as our limited user. And as you can see, right, that measure just disappeared. Now, this is incredibly useful when you're building out these large scale enterprise models. People are going to be connecting to them with Excel. They're going to be connecting to them with Power BI reports to essentially build their report on top of your semantic model. And they might not need to see or know about all of the measures depending on what department they're in. So, if you enjoy talking about enterprise BI, more advanced concepts like this, SQL, although it's been a really long time since I've talked about SQL or Python. I've been on a real Power BI kick lately. Um, Please consider subscribing. I really appreciate the time that you spent with me tonight, and I hope you learned something new.